mean, and that's why it did so well. I mean, it hit home with a lot of people. He wrote exactly what was going on, and people read it and responded to it. And like it says here, the plot also highlighted how Christmas had lost its former purpose. Well, he pointed that out.
Yeah. All right. So anyways, okay. Like I said earlier, we're going to talk about why A Christmas Carol was written and why Charles Dickens, decided to write it. He and kind of what he really wanted out of the book. This video is what we're going to cover is arrogance and want. You know who those two are, right? Those are. Have you read the book, The Christmas Carol?
I have.
Okay, so arrogance and want are the two children that are under the ghost of Christmas Present. And, we'll talk about that here in a second, but those are the two things he warns them about mankind, that this is usually their downfall is arrogance and want. So now the story behind this is pretty interesting. And some of it is the references of Tiny Tim and things like that are pulled from real life that happened to Charles. Do you like this book? How many times have you read it?
I've probably read it, like the actual book itself. I've probably read probably 3 or 4 times over my entire life. But of course, you see the movies and the specials and all that.
Yeah, it's gotten all kinds of different renditions. My favorite is the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah, love the Muppets. Anything with Muppets in is great.
Yeah, they do a very good job on. Actually, that's one of the ones that is really close to the book. To be honest. Now, the other one that I also is one of my favorites is the Scrooge McDuck one, the Disney one.
Yeah,
that one's always fun. Yeah, and then the one with the one they made with Bill Murray, kind of a modern day
Scrooged.
Yeah, that one was a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I love the book, Nicole says. Yeah, it is. It's a good book. It's very, very old. Bigfoot is sometimes confused with Sasquatch, yet he never complains. There's this joke.
But
the Mickey Christmas Carol is the one with Scrooge McDuck. That is correct. Now, he wrote this book when he was in his 30s. So he's pictured there, which is pretty. I don't know. Have you ever thought of writing a book in your 30s?
Well, I just turned 31 on the 7th. So I mean, I could. I've always wanted to write a book.
Okay, well maybe you can.
Maybe I can. He can. He did. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Okay. So in May of 1843, Charles was invited to a fundraiser dinner in aid of the Charterhouse Square Infirmary, which cared for the elderly, impoverished men. Ironically, most of the diners were very wealthy men who made fortunes in the city of London. So he went to this fundraising, but everyone there was probably the elite of London at that time. Dickens wrote a letter to his friend Douglas Gerald describing them as sleek, sobering, bow-punched, overfed, and just kind of like snorting cattle. So he didn't like that very much. This is like the beginning of who he came up with Scrooge. Like that sounds like a Scrooge character, right? Those people that he just mentioned. Now the author was burning with desire to bring about genuine changes to society. He was stricken down by reading the 1843 report on Britain's child labor. So like in 1843, there was a lot of kids that were young who were working. Yeah. I mean, instead of getting guitars, they were working in, mines, coal mines, or doing some other manual labor, chimney sweepers, stuff like that. He didn't like that. He didn't think that was very. He doesn't think our society should be working our kids that way. So he was, like I said, he intended to write a pamphlet to kind of tell people like this is horrible. We shouldn't do this on behalf of the poor man's child. But he decided that no, he's going to do something better. He wanted like a real blow to someone. He wanted to really touch the heart of people's souls and kind of really get this message out there that, what's really happening out there. And it would be a lot probably more impactful than, say, a government pamphlet. You would agree, right? If when you see a movie nowadays that kind of says like a thing or something's going on in the world, you probably pay attention more to that, like a documentary, than you would if someone would come to your door and hand you like a piece of paper. Right?
Oh, for sure.
Right. Like there's plenty of documentaries out there that really hit you on the heartstrings, and you think, oh, okay, well, I should do something, or maybe I should be a better person doing something else. So I think he was in favor of that, and I think that was really good.
And I'll add to that though. I mean, you think about it, music, plays, like I said, documentaries, movies, those kind of mediums are the things that reach people. You know, you get that pamphlet and you read it over. I'm sure, you know, if you go to your state fair or some kind of thing and someone's running for office, well, they hand you this pamphlet. One guy, we were somewhere and he handed us, he said he was running for senator, and this is a letter his wife wrote about him. Would you read it? Well, I didn't, you know, like I just, you know, I just didn't care to, you know, read it. Now, if there was a documentary titled Bob Smith for Senator, Alien Crusher or something, I don't know, something snatchy, or, you know, America Innovator or something like that. Yeah, maybe I'll watch the documentary, check it out, and I think it's a better medium to get across what you want. It can pull at the heartstrings. It can hit.
And I agree. Like there's even YouTubers out there that do that kind of stuff. So in October of the same year, Dickens traveled to Manchester to give a speech about charity for working men and women. His older sister, Fanny, lived in Manchester with her husband, Henry Bennet, and their two sons, Harry and Charles. Where Dickens visited them, he was confronted by difficulties facing his disabled nephew, Harry. So his nephew, Harry, was disabled. And that time in 1843, that was pretty rough. And that's where Tiny Tim kind of comes into play in the story. It made him think about the realities of what life was like for impoverished, disabled children whose lives are even harder than those that are able-bodied siblings. Harry was inspired from Tiny Tim. Unfortunately, though, he didn't have the same ending. Henry did not survive, even though his uncle's best efforts to keep him going. And this was in a time in London right before the Industrial Revolution, where people were just really out of work. They actually called these the Hungry 40s, where there was a lot of impoverished people, and the divide between wealthy and poor was very, very wide. So he was just horrified when he saw this. And that's where he got the family. That's where he got the idea of the family in the book, The Christmas Carol, and Tiny Tim. And he was just very like struck by this, like, oh my gosh. And then the 40s, like I said, the Hungry 40s, they were not only depression, but they had really bad harvests, and food was just very scarce for the people that couldn't afford it. So then you had, like you said, you had the Scrooges, and you had the poor. So when this book was written, it was in real time. Those were real events happening when you read the book. And you do see that with Scrooge, right? He kind of doesn't want to give money to the charity, right? He doesn't want to
he wants to hold on to all of his wealth.
no raises, right? He scoffs at people that are not as wealthy as him, and that's really part of the story, right? He's just very Scrooge, and you see that in all the other renditions. In that one with Bill Murray, he's a high executive, doesn't care about anybody,
right?
You know, he lets other people do shopping for him. That sort of thing. Let's see here. So at that speech, though, he was so passionate. He called for reform. He had seen his word burn with fury, and he's feeling powerless. So he rallied at how the upper class, wealthy, privileged men seemed to determine never to share their riches and those who needed help. How often have we heard from a large class of men that a little learning is a dangerous thing, why a little hanging was considered a very dangerous thing, according to the same authorities, with this difference that because a little hanging was dangerous, we had a great deal of it, and because a little learning was dangerous, we would have none at all. His speech was reported in newspapers all over the country. So this his big speech, and he did a lot of speeches, by the way. Charles did.
Yeah.
He spoke at a lot of colleges, places. People love to hear him speak. He, but what he's saying there is, he's like, if we don't learn like what's going on down the street from us, or like if we don't change the people around us, we don't learn how we're impacting others. It could be the downfall of most of all society. So that's what I got out of that. What did you think?
Well, I mean, you say that again, that you have a little bit of learning is dangerous. Well, I think they're saying that on both sides. If they were to learn what's going on with the folks in poverty, and that's who you're standing on. Those are the backs that are carrying your wealth. So you need to learn in that respect. And then on the other side of it, if those people learn some of the stuff that the wealthy people know, then maybe they'll be able to get ahead, and then they'll make the wealthy people the poor people. That's what the wealthy thought back in those times, is if I let them know the things that I know, then they'll get wealthy and I'll be the poor one. That's a mindset. So that's kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah, it's true. I would agree with that, because in the Christmas Carol, you do see that where he doesn't want to give anybody a chance to kind of move ahead.
Yeah, right. Bob Cratchit is always under his foot. That's where he keeps him, and that's where he thinks he needs to stay. So
yeah, because he's getting older. And he doesn't want Bob to take over, really.
Take over and cast him out.
What's sad is because he wasn't that way at first. He was a very generous person at first, as a boy, as a young man. Yeah. But once he got into the business world, and he wanted all the money and the wealth that comes with his success, he became very arrogant, right?
He did.
By the time Dickens traveled back to London, he knew he needed to write something monumentally important. The first known mention of A Christmas Carol is a letter to Scottish academic Marcy V. Napier on October 24th. I plunged headlong into a little scheme and set an artist at work upon it. The artist was Dickens' great friend John Leech, who would become famous as one of the leading cartoonists for Punch. So if you look at the old book, the artwork there is really fantastic. I'll show some of it here in a second. One of the sketches from that book, and it's actually really good illustration in the original. It's really good. So, and there were color ones. There were versions where it's just black and white sketches. So that was pretty cool. So like, even though the story was good, it even had good illustration of everything there as well. Let's see. Okay, so Dickens spent 6 weeks to write it, which is pretty amazing. He finished the novel on December 2nd, but instead of being revered, he was stressed and panicked about the finances. His bank was overdrawn, and his publishers Chapman and Hall were unsupportive of what they considered a strange idea. His current novel, Martin, I think that says Shewitchit. I think that's how you say it. What? Chuzowit.
Maybe.
Martin Chuzowit. Had lost readers. It was basically a flop. It didn't work out. Lost readers during its serialization, and publishers were losing confidence in the star author. So he was pretty big at the time when he wrote this. People knew who he was.
Yeah, Dickens this was kind of on his way down in popularity. He was on the tail end of his career, supposedly, for that time.
Supposedly, yeah. And they were like, "Oh, your pen is drying out. So basically, yeah. So as a result, they refused to pay the full cost for publishing A Christmas Carol. So Dickens paid the rest himself. Now the book was finished. Dickens was furious at how little effort Chapman and Hall were making to publicize it. They came to regret their lack of confidence. A Christmas Carol was an instant and overwhelming success in 1844. Charles moved to the rival publishing house, Bradbury and Evans. So I'm sure that happens a lot in Hollywood, right? Where someone has a script and they're like, move on. And it goes to someone else. And
it's a big hit.
It's a big hit. Now, I did a conversation about the movie Home Alone on After the Weekend. And that was sort of that way. Where people were like, I don't know if this is really going to do anything. And it became one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Yeah. Same with Charlie Brown, A Christmas Story, or I'm sorry, Charlie Brown's Christmas. CBS was like, we're going to take it, but it might not do well. And look at what you have now. Christmas always seems to go well if you do it right with people. Let's see. So here's another rendition of the art there. It's like captured everyone's soul. I guess everybody wanted to have this book. People had been feeling nostalgic for the ways which Christmas had been celebrated in the past. British Isles were ripe for a Christmas renaissance. The plot also highlighted how Christmas had lost its former purpose as a time of charitable giving. So remember we said earlier, a lot of people were like, I'm not going to give my money. I'm not going to do any of that. This book did what he wanted. It got people to think,
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the book, right?
And it seems like he painted a very good picture of the time. I mean, and that's why it did so well. I mean, it hit home with a lot of people. He wrote exactly what was going on, and people read it and responded to it. And like it says here, the plot also highlighted how Christmas had lost its former purpose. Well, he pointed that out.
Yeah, it's true. And so what he wanted in the book to happen to Scrooge actually happened to some people after they read the book.
Yeah.
Which that makes a really good story, right? When someone's like, "Oh, I can do that." Why not? Why not? I do that. Astonishing and immediate success of A Christmas Carol surprised even its author. 6,000 copies were published on December 19th, and on Christmas Eve, Dickens received a letter from Chapman and Hall to say, as the orders were coming in fast from town and country, it would soon be necessary to reprint. The novelist William Thackeray wrote a heartfelt review in Fraser's magazine saying, "It seems to me national benefit, and to every man or woman who reads it a personal kindness." So a lot of people just love this thing. It's a very good book. Even if you read it today, you would get the same message. By coincidence, though, 1843 was also the year in which the very first Christmas card was produced commercially. It was the idea of a frantically busy civil servant, Harry Cole, who didn't have time to write the expected long Christmas letters. You ever got one of those from people that write their like a year summary?
Yep, of the whole family, what everyone's doing.
Yeah,
it's kind of like them flyers, man. Kind of like them pamphlets.
He had 1,000 cards printed, and those he didn't need, he put up for sale. This helped to encourage a new fashion for Christmas. And you have millions of them today. Yeah, so isn't that crazy that one of the best Christmas books to come to our light also was the first year a Christmas card was available. And that's it right there. That's the very first Christmas card.
1843 was a year of Christmas.
It was. And it probably was. It was probably it's one of those sparks that needed to happen, right?
Yeah.
There was probably a lot of not so good things happening at this time, and I think that really helped people. A Christmas Carol has never been out of print. There's a lot of books like that too. It is known throughout the world and it can be guaranteed to be commented on in newspapers every December or a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Dickens used it as a mouthpiece for his own feelings about society and the start. At the start, Ebenezer Scrooge utters the comment that poor people who are unable to work should die. Decrease the surplus population. So that's basically what he thought those men were saying at that fundraiser
from The Office.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Dwight Schrute says that. That's a pretty hardcore thing to say. Dickens was voicing that he believed many of his readers felt about the poor, and how he believed people had once viewed him as the laboring child of a imprisoned debtor. These words haunt Scrooge, and he grows to be deeply ashamed for having thought of human beings as worthless. And you get to see that in every rendition of this story, book, rewrite. It's the scene, right, where he pops out of the window and he's like, "Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody!" He runs down the street.
Got the big hams, got all the Christmas presents. Yeah,
he buys the ham. He throws a whole bag of money to people that are asking for his charity. And the one thing he does I thought was really cool. He goes to Cratchit's home, and he overwhelmingly treats his family with just joy. Like he makes sure that, hey, you've been with me for a very long time. You're a very hard worker. This is how I'm going to treat you going forward. And I bet you, if they had a sequel, I bet you Cratchit would be taking over and maybe have. I think Scrooge would inherit that business to him because he worked so hard for that. Because back then you had like what they called it,
apprentices.
You don't have any. You don't really have that anymore. Apprentices, yeah. So I always thought that was a fun time of the book. That even happens in the movie Scrooged.
Yeah,
he goes around like kissing everybody.
Yeah, and
he rehires that one guy. yeah, it's pretty funny. So what Dickens thought was the essence of A Christmas Carol is often left out of adaptations so this is what the real reason why he wrote this. When the ghost of Christmas Present is starting to age and fade away, Scrooge notices something underneath the spirit's robe. He thinks it's an animal claw. This is like one of the creepiest parts too.
Yeah.
But it's a skinny human hand, 2 children. Wretched, abject, frightfully hideous, miserable, clung upon the outside of its garment a boy and a girl. Spirit, are they yours? Scrooge couldn't say no more. They are man's, said the spirit, looking down upon them. This boy is arrogance, this girl is want. Beware them both and all their decree. So like he's warning you, if you want something so bad that you become arrogant, it's probably not going to end very well for you, right? Arrogant people are never really, in the end, they never really get what they really want. It just seems like this was his main message of the book. This was Dickens' main reason for writing A Christmas Carol. He wanted his readers to realize that if they continue to deny poor children the necessities of life, such as food, shelter, warm clothing, healthcare, and education, they would grow up to become dangerous, violent adults. That's pretty true.
I mean, what are you going to do if you have a family and you can't feed them? Well, in those days, and there's people who do it today, lie, cheat, steal, do what you have to do to provide for your family. You make those people dangerous. I mean, that's how I feel about that. I mean,
and I guess that's where it also comes from. It's like you want to provide for your family, but you're willing to be arrogant enough to commit a crime that you don't think you'll get away with, right?
Yeah,
that's usually what could happen there. The child born in a workhouse who was not as fortunate as Oliver Twist, or the impoverished child who didn't die young like little Neil, would grow up to become another Bill Sykes, Fagin, Little, Emily, and Daniel Krupp. So those are all characters that he has written in the past.
Right.
But all of his books have like a real tie to children having some hard times in the Victorian era of Britain. I just thought it was fascinating that he like one of his main reasons for writing a book was not just for Christmas.
Right.
It was the message where we have to do better, be better people in the world to like help one another.
And I think that's a message that goes beyond just Christmas. I mean, obviously it's just be a better person, period. But Christmas is a good time to reevaluate those kinds of things.
It is, right? You start thinking about other family members that maybe you haven't talked to for a while.
Right.
Friends, you try to think if they're doing okay. And then you kind of think about, okay, just like Santa Claus, right? Good kid, bad kid. Did I do well this year? Did I do okay? And it's weird how our society does that, because even like at work, you have like your end reviews are usually at the end of the year, right around now, or people are looking forward to like hearing how they did for the whole year. It's just interesting that everything ties to that, to like kind of going back, well, how did I be? How was I a good person? Did I do good things? And there's a famous message from Tiny Tim, God bless us all, everyone. And that's true. I try to say that sometimes to everyone. It's a good message. It makes me, now when you hear the story when you're a kid with A Christmas Carol, you really don't think about all that.
No.
You're just like, oh, cool. He's going back in time. He's talking to spirits.
Yeah.
He becomes cool later. But when you're an adult, then you really start thinking about what we just talked about.
And I think it's cool how that message transcends time. I mean, it's, how many other books from 1843 do you remember? But that message, that main message, really hits home for a lot of people, and especially like here in America, where there's a lot of us who do very, very well. But there are those who do not do very, very well. So I think that you got to remember this too. He didn't write this for the people in poverty. They couldn't afford the book. It was the people who had all the wealth that would buy Charles Dickens books. That's who he was talking to.
It was.
And he got the message across to people who did not want to hear that message. So he wrote from the heart, and it really touched people. I think that Charles Dickens has, written a masterpiece. Obviously, it's adapted 1,000 different ways, at least once a year.
So, and if you think about it, some people try to do that today with a message, but it comes off wrong, right?
Yeah.
Or they're just so focused on that.
Or it's preachy,
it's preachy, or it turns into bad writing, right? So you can have a message in your story. There's no problem with that. It's just how you present it.
How you present it, yeah.
And do you really mean what you say when you say it? And I think Charles Dickens did. And I think that was great to share that information with you and talk about that. I think that was pretty cool. So again,